Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Of course, we're doing postmortem on last night's debate, and my sort of summary on it, to put it in sports terms, and you know my rule about sports metaphors for politics, Amy.
Only you can use them.
That's correct. He built up a lead in the first half, and he kicked a field goal at the gun to hang on. That's basically what I think happened last night.
He just didn't motivate me to want to get up and vote for him, even though I'm going to vote for him. But there was no closing argument. There was no, this is why the country needs me, because I want to help you.
I just don't understand. The thing about Trump I just never quite gotten, which is why a guy who is so intuitive when it comes to marketing and packaging doesn't have modular answers on topics that he can plug in and out as needed. So let me give you an example of what I mean. This was Kamala Harris. She only did it really once, but Kamala Harris taking up the issue of Trump's legal challenges.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. And Trump's response?
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York, every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
So, I mean, he sort of gets around to it, essentially, and the use of the term weaponization repeatedly, I guess, drives home a point to some extent. But, this is where he forgets the audience a little bit, too, and needs to just calm down and explain. I mean, let's take stock of where we're at. First of all the cases that Kamala's referred to, every one of these prosecutors ran on prosecuting Trump. Who does that? Imagine that's third world stuff when you have candidates for office running on prosecuting somebody they don't like politically. This is Soviet. Right. This is Soviet. We're show me the man and I'll find you the crime stuff. In addition to that, where are we right now? Let's just take stock of the state of our justice system under Biden-Harris. So Hunter Biden just pled guilty to take the hit for the old man and the entire crime family from Wilmington, and he sits on his hands waiting for a post-election pardon.
You're right.
My sentencing that Kamala just referred to gets pushed past the election because of course, the polling indicates it would create a political backlash that benefits me. So that's even though I wanted it, that's a political decision too. The judge in the January 6th case expedites the schedule for filings to the end of this month into next month so that you have a press corps that can write all this propaganda about January 6th and insurrection and Trump and so on and so forth. It's the same sort of propaganda you're hearing tonight from Kamala Harris that has no basis in fact. And these are the people who are going to save our democracy from the real threat to it, which, as we saw just last week, Merrick Garland trotting out, the real threat is some Putin front that pays that pays some unwitting conservative podcasters. I mean, this story, as I said the other day, this story would belong on the pages of a tabloid next to severed leg hops to hospital if it weren't true. But it is true. This is the justice system of the greatest nation the world has ever seen, and it should make people who believe in the promise of America and living as a free people in a peaceful, pluralist society completely despondent. That's what they have done to this justice system. So you want to talk about the justice system? It's not just about Trump. It's prosecuting political opponents of people whose names you don't know or have forgotten. Campaign staffers of mine. A dad in rural Pennsylvania who takes his son to pray for the unborn. Catholics who attend Latin Mass, targeted by the Richmond office of the FBI.
Parents at school board meetings.
Parents at school board meetings, yeah, that are right. That same Merrick Garland's Department of Justice writes about the domestic terrorist threat that parents speaking up at school board meetings pose. I mean, this is what's going on. This is the great prosecutor Kamala Harris's justice system. That could have been a moment. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Emma Jo Morris. She is the politics editor at Breitbart News. Emma Jo, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. Good morning.
Good morning. So what was your summation of yesterday's debate?
Well, it was complicated as a viewer because I thought I was watching a debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and apparently what I was watching was a debate between Donald Trump, the anchors on ABC News, and Kamala Harris sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that the real losers last night was ABC. I think that they disgraced themselves, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem with going after Muir and Jones and ABC is like he was going after them 3 weeks before the debate. This was the network that Biden chose. He agreed to it. It's built into the price. He sort of acknowledged it was built into the price, and then he complained about it after the debate. So, I mean, I just don't know how that sort of absolves you of performance, of an uneven performance, which is what I would suggest he had.
I wouldn't say that, but I do think that it was obviously totally unfair. Yes, he was calling it out beforehand. He was setting it up that way. He wasn't doing that on no basis. But, at least with CNN, they were not making themselves the center of attention through the night when he debated Joe Biden. This was a different story. They were interjecting. They were cutting him off. They were, quote unquote, fact checking, which was really just taking on his points on Kamala Harris's behalf. I'm not excusing his debate performance. I thought that it was too emotional. I thought that her tactic, which was literally reported on publicly,
right,
was to get under his skin. Everybody knew that was what she was going in trying to do because she is so thin on the issues. And it completely worked. He completely walked into literally every single trap she laid. He walked right into it. I'm not saying that didn't happen. All I'm saying is that it was particularly cheap the way it was put on.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Davis, when she was arguing with him, saying there are no post-birth abortions. That is not happening. And we have proof that has happened. And so I think they were in bed with him from the beginning. But what could he have done better, do you think, to win over more, the undecided voters?
If I was, advising him, which I'm sure his advisors told him, but he didn't do enough to take control of the frame of the conversation. She mentioned something about his inheritance. She mentioned something about his crowd size. all of these things were such obvious, glaring baits, and he took them. And what he could have done is waved away this nonsense, which has nothing to do with his capacity to be president or the case for why he should be president. He should have waved them away, ignored them, maybe pointed out how she's fixated on these banal, mundane things that have nothing to do with anything, and then pivoted toward topics that he wants to talk about that are important to the American people, that are more relevant than the things that the debate moderators were asking him, like January 6th. There was absolutely no reason for him to engage with any of this nonsense. He could have just ignored it and said, I am ignoring this. This is ridiculous. We have 20 million people who have just made themselves at home in our country illegally. We have rampant drug rates, rampant crime rates. This is absolutely unacceptable. The American people don't recognize their country anymore. The economy, I mean, we spent one question talking about the economy, and he didn't pivot there a single time after that. There was absolutely no reason whatsoever to be talking about and relitigating January 6th in the 2020 election. When he was posed those questions, he could have said, this is ridiculous. I reject the premise of this conversation. I'm going to talk to you about how I'm going to lower taxes.
Yeah. No, I think those are all good observations. Despite what I would call constructive criticism, I still think he had a strong enough performance in the first half of the debate, which is when most people were watching, that he ekes out an advantage, or he ekes out maintaining the advantage I think he had going into last night. But what's your view on that? Do you think that last night materially changes the race?
No, I don't think that, and this is, again, ABC's fault. They looked so juvenile, so in over their head, unprofessional. They were not able to organize this in any effective way. They didn't have relevant things to ask the candidates. So there was no real standout moment for either candidate. It was just, there was no standout moment. There was no memorable moment. There was no good shot that either of them got in on the other. I don't think that this really moves the needle. And unfortunately, there was no conversation about issues that speak to actual voters that I saw. So I can't see how anyone could be compelled one way or another.
You think Trump should take up the offer that was made by Kamala's campaign manager for a second debate next month?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. He needs to try this again, I think. And he's had, like with Hillary Clinton in 2016, his first debate performance was less good, and then his second performance was much better. I think that he was facing a brand new candidate, somebody who he has never had to take on before, unlike Joe Biden, who he had debated twice in 2020. This is a new landscape for him. This is a new challenge for him. I think he got a sense of her and what she's about last night, and I definitely think he should take another bite at the apple.
But don't you think he should set the parameters? I mean, I would love to see a town hall similar to what he did with Hillary.
I would love for him to have more say in the venue and format as well, but I just don't think that that's realistic. Realistically, the entire media is really campaigning against him. It's not even that they're liberal or that they're biased. They are activists. And as you saw with the CNN debate, for instance, that was a total, personalized, tailored to Joe Biden, and Trump got no say in it. He just basically gets presented with these completely unfair terms. He gets presented with this completely unfair turf, and he just has to accept it. Otherwise, the narrative is that he's too scared to debate. Mm-hmm. So in an ideal world, yes, it would be more fair. Too. He would get a chance to debate with Brett Baer and Martha McCallum as moderators. But we'll see what happens, because he doesn't get his way, and that's kind of baked into this whole experience for him, unfortunately. It's such a joke. Our media is such a joke.
It really is. I mean, they're just the comm shop for the new Bolshevik party. That's their so that's the role. That's the expectation you should have for them to perform that role that they have taken on. One other aspect of this, though, particularly for you, because for those who've forgotten, Emma Jo Morris is the one who broke the Hunter Biden laptop from hell story. Speaking of things that were debunked, I mean, the fact that it was a Russian information campaign, that was debunked. The story was right, and 50 of our best and brightest intel and law enforcement officers were wrong, as of course was that same press corps we're talking about. But we haven't been talking about it as much, maybe because of how pronounced X is and how vociferous Elon Musk has been in defense of free speech, RFK Jr. too, for that matter. But social media companies, these social media platforms' influence on this election too. I mean, they're in the tank for Kamala as well, and we haven't really been talking about the efforts that are being made and may yet be made to alter the flow of information in the run-up to November 5th. And I just wanted to get your take on it because you've had a front row seat for years on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same as usual. Unfortunately, typically these scandals come out after the fact. Like with the case that I was involved in, I mean, obviously we saw it in the moment that they were censoring my work, but we only really got the full extent of the election interference by the government, by the media, by social media companies way after the fact, sometimes years after the fact on certain elements of this plot. So obviously there's stuff going on. Obviously Silicon Valley is the power center of the tech universe, and it's extremely progressive. I don't think it's any mystery who the tech, CEOs want, and more importantly, who the people actually operating the platforms want, which is obviously usually where the shenanigans go on. But yeah, I mean, Google, got caught already on a little thing where they're repackaging and reformatting the way Kamala Harris's ads look to look like articles. That was a little hit that didn't get much attention, but it's kind of a big deal. Google does a lot of really subtle things like that, which make a huge impact. But unfortunately, it's like they're so secretive and so devious that it's impossible to track it all.
Emma Jo Morris, politics editor at Breitbart News, Breitbart.com. Emma Jo, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Sean Thompson. When you go on vacation, does it make sense to have somebody else pack for you? Of course not. The same can be said for your retirement. Your 401k could be packed with things you don't know about